You move to organizations that now appreciate the importance of data and they collect it, but they then suffer from paralysis by analysis. People spend the rest of their time trying to analyze data, trying to make it perfect to the extent that they cannot even make the decision.
So, hi everyone. It's Samaya Al Sherbini from Opus Talent Analytics, and this is the Executive Partner Podcast, a new podcast for everything related to the future world of work. This is related to a topic that's brand new. A lot of people talk about the future of work, but very little understand all the dimensions of what it stands for. So, we're here to listen to executives who understand, who've experienced, and who've witnessed the future world of work from their angle and from their experience. Today, we're talking to Colin Musunda, who's part of the Access to Finance Global Financial Inclusion team of the International Finance Corporation, also known as IFC. So, a very reputable organization. Colin has deep analytical knowledge of financial credit, access to finance, and credit reporting. So Colin's experience extends even beyond that into central banking, formation of financial policies, and fintech, just to name a few. Why are we talking to Colin today? Because Colin is an expert in machine learning and data science, and he will bring the aspects of innovation into our fintech discussion. The interesting thing about the future of work is that it was fast tracked. What does that really mean? It means, was it pushed by the repercussions of COVID, or was it pushed by the repercussions of innovation? And, or is it really a mix of both? And one of the daunting things that we hear a lot of people talking about these days is, will I be replaced by AI? And so today we're going to listen to a lot of discussions around how innovation in different aspects of innovation, not only from a technology perspective, but also from a process, from an appetite for new ideas, from a way to embrace success and failure, how that really helps us think through and really embrace how things will be done differently as we work differently. So, Colin, it's an absolute pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much, Sumaya, for having me for this wonderful and exciting conversation. I think it's coming at a time when people are at crossroads. I know a lot of people had gotten used to remote working. Now there's a conversation around hybrid working and all of that. So it's very interesting that we are having this conversation at this juncture. And I'm looking forward to exchanging views on this.
Perfect. So thank you. Same here. And for me, I think my first question is, let's talk to our audience about what the phrase future of work really means. What does it mean from your perspective?
Thanks for that. And this is one phrase that does not have a single definition. If you were to look at what a lot of people are looking at, seems to be a convergence around the idea of trying to predict or to define how the work environment is going to look like going into the future. You spoke about whether there is consensus of COVID being the driver to this conversation of future of work, or we were already on the journey and COVID simply accelerated it. I think we could look at that by talking about 3 or 4 trends which I think have driven the conversation. One, obviously, is the pandemic. By no doubt, can we underplay the role of the pandemic in accelerating this? But what is critical is the issue around digitization. And digitization has enabled things like remote working. It has created new industries like e-commerce, and all of that is defining the future of work. We talk about technology, AI, at its start. Now we are in the generative AI space and the various promises that it brings, the conversation of displacement versus complementarity of work. We talk about robotics and all of that. And all of this is skewing towards this whole notion around STEM jobs, which is science, technology, engineering, and a lot of that. One of the trends that I think is often underplayed is around demographics. So when I talk about demographics, I look at it from two angles, right? One is around just the basics of demographics. Asia and Africa is a demographic dividend. There are a lot of young people as compared to the Western economies. But with the positivity that comes with demographics around agility and all of the other things, we should also be aware that young people are not as loyal to brands, and I'm using loyal in quotes, or employers as old people like you and I. in our generation, one would stick through an employer for quite some time, but I've come to realize that the young generation will be on a job for 2, 3, 4 years and they leave. Even with products, it's the same with products. They are not loyal to products. They understand their value, and all of that has implications on the future of work. I'm going to unpack some of those issues, but I thought that would be a very good, nice way of framing the conversation.
Perfect. That's a really, really interesting framing, because I agree with you that diversity of style, diversity of thinking, diversity which is generational, diversity of priorities, actually, believe it or not. Even, some people, I have friends who are Gen Zers and Gen Xers, so my age, and they suddenly their priorities have shifted. So let's try to unpack this a little bit more and talk about how the influence of all these dynamics are going to reshape the new way we're going to be doing business.
So let me start with remote, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time because I know that a lot of people talk about it and they are more qualified to talk about it. I'll just share my 2 cents on it. Remote or hybrid working has been a blessing for a lot of companies across the globe. It increased the labor pool, so you wake up and you are able to tap into the rest of the world as a global source of labor force, without having to deal with visa issues and a lot of other constraints that comes with it. And it also brought to the fore the whole issue around employee wellness. I think we cannot underplay the fact that, generally speaking, people noticed an improvement in employee wellness during the remote hybrid work. But we can not also underplay the influence from a financial standpoint. So someone sitting in Cairo working in the US and getting paid in US dollars means in foreign currency inflows for Egypt. So those are some of the benefits, but we also need to look at the other side. It's number one, resulting in brain drain. So you wake up one day as a country, you have people who are residents, they are sort of captive labor, but they are not working for you. They are working for other economies and all of that, which in itself can actually be a problem if not managed properly. Then the other issue is implications on issues around, for example, small businesses. I live in DC, as you indicated, and one of the sad realities that we have to live with every day is the fact that there are businesses that closed as a result of remote working. And the sad story is that most of these are small businesses that are run by either women or even youth. I often give an example of restaurants which closed because of the of remote working. and you start thinking about the gains that we thought we were achieving in promoting small businesses, in promoting women into businesses, into labor force, and all of that, and you start feeling sad because it is a reality that SMEs contribute the most in terms of GDP across the globe. In certain markets, is as large as 60%. And in other emerging markets, the contribution to the labor force is as much as 80 to 90%. And also the fact that SMEs contribute about 90% of new jobs. So the moment you start looking at that, then that conversation should be looked at slightly differently. And I'll leave it to the experts to keep on exploring on that. The issue that I wanted to touch a bit more on is around digitization. Digitization, whether you can bunch digitization and technology, generally speaking, throw in AI, generative AI, and all of that. It gives us huge opportunities, right? There are a lot of data sets that are being generated as people transact digitally, they operate digitally, and it gives us an opportunity to be able to make data-driven decisioning, both at an organization level and even at a macro level. And I'll give a few examples, right? So internally at an organization, a company can start looking at the data that they are getting, do analytics, whether it's the descriptive analytics, predictive analytics, or even look at prescriptive and predictive analytics, right? Look at how they can optimize their human capital.
Yes.
Look at how they can influence even training. Look at how you can influence recruitment, because now you have data that is flowing. You are able to forecast your demand. You are able to see how you can optimize human capital at a macro level. And this was one of my excitement when I met you guys the time I came to Cairo, and what your company stands for. How do we translate what we are seeing at an organization level to a macro conversation? We have said, for example, that most of these jobs that are emerging are STEM jobs. From a macro level, do we have statistics around STEM jobs? How does that influence our national skills planning policy as a government? How does that influence our education policy as a government? So that we are able to deal with some of the challenges that are going to come out of it. And one example that I can give is that if you look at robotics and AI, the whole conversation around displacement versus complementarity, we cannot shy away from the fact that there are jobs that are going to be displaced. We'll be fooling ourselves if we say it's one extreme, it's complementary. And I'll give you examples. Self-driving cars will mean that there will not be a driver in that car, and it's a job that's lost.
Yeah.
Checkouts, and in most developed economies, in Walmart you get there, in Amazon you do self-checkout. It means we are losing tailors. It means we are losing cashiers, right?
True.
Those are displacements. If you take that conversation to emerging economies and developing economies where you are already dealing with high levels of unemployment, how does that influence your national skills policy? How do you ensure that you retrain those that are losing jobs so that they become relevant? So those are some of the issues we need to look at. Two more issues, and I know you are you are eager to chime in here. We also are noticing the creation or emergence of a gig or content industry.
Yes.
When social media started, all we thought about was the normal chatting, greeting, and all of that as a means of communication. But there is a new industry that is evolving there, right? And that industry will require support. And as someone who works in access to finance, we have started looking at that to say, how do we promote access to finance to be able to scale some of those businesses, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
if you were to take that kind of business to a traditional banker and you say, can you fund a content creator? They will say, but where is the collateral? They want to do their 5 C's. Where is the collateral? Most of the content creators are young people.
Sure.
They don't have collateral, right? So how do you use the data that is generated by this content creator? For a simple example, the views and things like that, to be
Yes.
able to then say, can we do credit worthiness assessment for this particular business? So
Yes.
how do we use the data that is being generated to promote access to credit for these people?
And Colin, these are super, super interesting points because, in my view, the inability for us to A, capture data, B, analyze data, C, convert analysis into insights, and D, to take action before we even start predicting. So let's take action based on these things are not happening in our countries, in our continent, in our world, and there's huge opportunity because if to your point, with small and mid-sized businesses that are controlling economies, if you are able to really really look 2 steps ahead, if you're a small business or if you're a mid-sized business and you're really putting penny to penny to pay payroll, you want to make sure that every penny paid is giving you the right ROI. And if it's not, it needs to be reinvested and re-engineered, even to the simple fact of I've got great people, but I need to be ahead of the curve. So how do I skill them so that they are ready for the next wave of change? We're opening in a new market, we're expanding in a new geo, we're adding a line of business, whatever it may be.
You spoke about one of the things that I found fascinating when I started working in the data space. So if you look at it as a continuum, you start with organizations that are not collecting or even using data. Then you move to organizations that now appreciate the importance of data and they collect it, but they then suffer from paralysis by analysis. People spend the rest of their time trying to analyze data, trying to make it perfect to the extent that they cannot even make the decision, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
and at the end of the day, it becomes such a waste and it's a liability. I always tell people that there's this notion that around data, some call it the new oil, and I argue that oil is not renewable. But data is, so it can be oil. Some call it blood, some call it an asset, some call it a liability. And I always caveat and say it's only an asset if you are able to monetize it and to get value. And monetization is not necessarily external monetization. You can monetize it internally, right? Which speaks to your point around being able to utilize the data to make policies, right? At a firm level and even at a national level, to then say, these are the insights that we are getting. How do we react? And
Yes.
and the sad part is that in this conversation of future of work, we have largely been reactive as opposed to leading the conversation. And that is the sad part. So people are trying to see how they are react or defend themselves rather than influencing the conversation and saying, okay, our statistics or our analytics is telling us this. How do we start training for the future?
Yes.
How do we start reconfiguring our organizations for the future? But
Yes.
unfortunately, most people are just defending, and that is why you see that we are going to have huge swings across the pendulum. So
Yes.
if the market leaders say mostly hybrid, everyone will go hybrid. When the market leaders say we are going back to the office, everyone is going to go back to the office, even those that do not necessarily need to.
Yeah.
So we need to be very, very deliberate and actually look at what the data is saying and work on it. And one of the things that I always talk about in the space of data and technology is that we should also know that there are risks associated with that. There were issues around AI risk, for example. AI or any other technology is a function of who designed it. So it does not take out the preconceived views of whoever was developing it. We deal with issues around biases, which we have seen in the finance world, and those biases are also perpetuating. I was laughing the other time to say, if you are an organization that is now saying I can recruit globally, and your policies of recruitment have not taken into account the change in demographics and the change in your geography, you'll find that you'll still be trying to recruit an American in Egypt, if you get what I'm saying. So if you do not adjust and you say, as a simple example, you should have gone to Harvard, but you are trying to recruit people from Egypt, what are the odds that you get more than 20 people who are in Egypt who have gone to Harvard, right?
Yeah.
So we still see that even in how people are dealing with recruitment and issues like that. And those are some of the issues that we need to deal with. And one last point that I can say on that is the issue around data. In credit, we talk about traumatized data sets. So if the data set that you used at the development of your model is not reflective of the entire ecosystem, the results that you are going to get are traumatized, and you can't expect anything beyond that.
Yeah. And I want to point to that and maybe build on that and ask you the question around the skilling, because this is a very, very, very big subject, very debatable. A lot of people have different points of view around what skills can we build, what skills do we need to just go out there and buy, what skills can we just face up to reality. We're not going to be able to get them. So maybe we use AI or kind of automated digitalization methods to help close the gap. So from your perspective, given that there are so many changing variables around us, what are some of the things that business leaders need to really think about or maybe have in front of them as they think about this big challenge?
So I always say that the starting point is for us to define what we do as a business, right? What is the core purpose of our existence? Once we define that, we should be able to be comfortable to outsource that which we are not good at. And what I like is that we have seen an emergence of as a service solutions where people are deciding to focus their activities and their energies around what they know best. If it is software, you now have software as a service. If it's platform, you now have platform as a service. And you guys are a good example of that. So if I realize that I don't have the skills, I will outsource that functionality to you, to let you just come and do plug and play, and I concentrate on my core business. And this is the reality that we need to quickly grasp. And what it does is that you will find that there are certain companies that are going to be focusing on what they are doing, and you guys are also going to be focusing on your core purpose of existence, which will be, in this particular case, let's say HR analytics, which means that you guys are going to be the employer of people who are in the HR analytics space. So what it does is that it's still allowing us to expand our employment pie, but in specialized forms.
Yeah.
And that for me is important, because we also need to be very pragmatic. I cannot wake up tomorrow and become an engineer. No matter how hard you want to try and reskill me, not because I don't have the mental capacity, I chose my profession very carefully. When I was deciding what I wanted to do, there were very many options from liberal arts, culinary, engineering, HR, and I decided what I want to do. We should still know that people are in that space where they have to make decisions on what they want to do, and skills are also always going to be fungible to the extent to which the employees allow them to be fungible. So let's allow for those industries to emerge, support some of the as a service businesses that are emerging, so that as companies we focus on what is core to our existence.
Perfect. Okay, so if I give you the final word, a word of wisdom that you would want to leave people who are still trying to get their head around the world of work, the future, be it world of work, the now world of work, whatever it may be, how would you kind of summarize it in one just sentence for them to think about or leave them with some words of wisdom?
So I will disappoint you by not giving you one sentence. I'll give you a few. The first thing for me which matters is that one size fit all will not work. Be ready to make mistakes and to learn and to recalibrate. Okay? Allow for flexibility. Flexibility is going to matter and context is going to matter. What is happening in the US might not be applicable in Africa. What's happening in Africa might not be applicable in Asia. So let's allow for that flexibility. Let's allow for context to influence what we do. And let's be willing to make decisions and correct on our way. In parting, rather than being defensive or reactionary, we need to set the path. And for me, that is the critical part. People are being reactionary, they wait. Um, but there's an opportunity in setting the path and being mindful that you make wrong decisions along the way.
Perfect. Colin, thank you for the fascinating perspectives. Really enjoyed our chat. Look forward to having you maybe come once again and talk to us about another angle. We'll figure it out. I'll convince you in some sort of way. But thank you for making time. And you have been listening to and viewing actually the Executive Corner. This is a new podcast that focuses on future world of work. Please tune in, please listen, please view and follow us. And we'll see you in the next coming episode. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.